What's up, everybody? And this is a new edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. And you know that Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Cam Smith rocking with my man, Casey Johnson, CHSN Bulls Insider, as we continue on through this all season that is the NBA with the Chicago Bulls. But we know that the playoffs are definitely in full swing with the Eastern and Western Conference Finals spicing up, and we'll get to that conversation a little bit later on in the pod. But first things first, we got to touch on and hit you with some Bulls knowledge because we are creeping closer to the NBA draft in late June as we're starting to ramp up with these individual workouts that are going on across the league with some teams in position to make some decisions on where and who they want to go with, especially for those teams in the lottery. So I want to pass the ball to my man, Casey Johnson, and he's going to get buckets because he has some information as we go through this draft workout and just as we get closer to the NBA draft. So what's the latest that you have for us, Casey?
Yeah, I mean, the Bulls, like all teams, are in the process of conducting individual workout or group workouts. They are actually having one today. This is just one data point. All teams do this. Obviously, it's good intel to get guys in your building, put them through your workout process. They've obviously also met with some players at the Combine, as we previously discussed. Some teams open this draft workout process to the media. The Bulls are not one of those teams. They're doing their due diligence, getting as many people in as they can. A couple of things I've heard, since the last time we talked, Cam, is that this is all, one is league-wide and one is more Bulls specific, is there are a lot of question marks about Derik Queen's draft stock and status coming out of that Combine where he did not test very well athletically. I mean, clearly he's a skilled big man and can score and very offensively gifted. But I think there are some question marks, not only with the Bulls, but also around the league. Just, will he slide on draft night? Will he be like a 𝗦𝗶𝗶 𝗟𝗏 from a year ago and kind of fall maybe initially projected top 5, top 6 to a lower status? And if that is the situation and he is there at 12, would he be a fit with the Bulls, especially as you and I discussed about with the way the Bulls want to play, fast, athletically, up and down. So, that's one thing league-wide. And then more Bulls specific. And, we joke about how all teams always say, they're going to take best player available and not just focus on need. And we've always said the front court is more of a need than the back court. I've been told that is the best player available is definitely in play for the Bulls. They will not be averse to taking a guard if a guard slots as, the best player on their board when they get to number 12. And the logic behind that is, even though they are guard heavy right now, the next roster iteration for the Bulls really is projected for that 2026 offseason because that's when they get a lot of salary cap space. And really the only guys you can project long-term from the backcourt for this team right now are Josh Giddey and Coby White. Even 𝗬𝗎, as good as he is, could be potentially a trade candidate down the road. Yeah. Kevin Huerter, his deal is up. I could see him re-signing, but as far as guys like Javon Carter, Lonzo Ball, I don't see them in the long-term plans past 2026. And that is why you can't just say, they got a lot of guards. We're going to pass on a Jace Richardson, or we're going to pass on a Egor Demin, who is a guy who's buzzing with a lot of teams around the league. Yeah. So that's just, again, month out, a lot of twists and turns, a lot of speculation, but that's kind of where things stand as of today.
Listen, Casey, you got me sitting on the edge of my seat with that information because I think we have been really connected on so many ways when we do this By the Horns podcast. And we appreciate all of our viewers that are watching right now on CHSN's YouTube page. And if you're listening to us wherever you get your pod, we appreciate it. But I mentioned that me and Casey are in alignment because the names of Derik Queen and Egor Demin, those are two guys with the Bulls at that 12 spot, just depending on what that situation presents for them. If they are available, maybe Asa Newell, if he's available, it really puts things in an interesting spot. But I believe that Newell will be gone before we get to the 12th overall pick, where the Bulls are, just because he's just that damn good. I really like Asa Newell, and I spoke on this on the Chicago Lead yesterday, the day, actually Memorial Day, when we had that show, and as we record this on Tuesday, May 27th, and it's also wild to think that it's May 27th, KC. We just need that weather to catch up with the actual date because we want it to be officially summertime. But you're looking at this Bulls team and going with fit over need and best player available, which is interesting because when I bring up the names of, especially a Egor Demin from BYU, he's a guy at 6'9", is not lacking in confidence at all. Like if you listen to him speak, and we were able to tap in with him during media availability during the draft combine, there were a couple of times when he was speaking, KC, when I was interviewing him and talking with him, he was speaking in the first person. And I'm like, oh, okay, that kind of caught me off guard a little bit, but it breeds and it really lives in the confidence that he has for himself. And you have to expect that, right? For a guy that is Russian, that, moved over to Spain to play for Real Madrid. He's with Real Madrid, even though he didn't really truly play with Real Madrid, played some preseason games and played one game with them, and then had to make the jump from European basketball at the pro level to BYU and playing for Kevin Young and playing some big-time basketball in the Big 12. So if you don't carry yourself with a sense of confidence or a little bit of arrogance sprinkled in on yourself, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to be successful, let alone make it to the NBA. Now, you don't have to be boisterous or arrogant with your confidence. Some guys are a little more humble with their confidence or arrogance. Some guys are just outwardly just very, open with who they are and speaking on the game. But Demin is a dude that does not lack in that area. And when you look at him at 6'9" and what he can be, I know a lot of people want to make the comparisons to 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗶 and just who he is. But I think the difference between Demin and 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗶 is that you can play Demin off the ball from watching him at BYU and what he's able to do. And I was listening to him on the Ringer's Bald on Live pod, and he's speaking, and he's saying that he doesn't consider himself a point guard, and then really challenged the host and listeners, like, can you name the point guard for the Boston Celtics? And he's like, no, you can't name the point guard because they don't have a point guard. So he considers himself more of a playmaker than a point guard. So off the ball, with how this Bulls team wants to play, if he's available, I wouldn't be surprised if they do select Demin. But again, kind of like Newell, KC, as you mentioned with Demin, that name is rising as one of the hotter names that we have as we are a month out from the draft. And you know how those things go. When that hot name starts to rise on those mock draft boards, you're gonna hear that name maybe selected in the top 5 or top 7 picks.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is early and we got a month to go, so it's going to take more twists and turns. But Cam, I actually would be surprised if Demin is there at 12. I mean, right now his buzz has kind of got him climbing, and Queen's buzz as of right now is kind of going the other way. And now, how much of a slide will that be? Because initially he was projected as a top 5, maybe a top 6 pick. Again, it's too early to speculate. But the thing about Demin that I completely agree with you is, like, if he is there at 12, you could see the Bulls, envisioning him as a fit alongside 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗶 and kind of like these multiple ball handlers. Just, doesn't matter who's got it, you push, bring it up. Just guys who can make plays either on or off the ball. Again, generously speaking, the model that we can project 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗶 vision to be, given that postseason press conference, is the Indiana Pacers. And whereas the Indiana Pacers do have a bona fide point guard and main ball handler, they also have just wave after wave of two-way wing players that just keep coming at you. And, to me, Demin kind of projects, you could call him a point guard, you could call him a point forward, whatever you want. He's a basketball player. And I think the biggest takeaway that we need to make here is the Bulls are going to stay true to most teams' philosophy of taking the best player available. They're not going to get hung up on, we're heavy on guards, light on front court. No, they're gonna do their draft work, slot their board, and whoever's at the top of their board when number 12 comes up, that's going to be the pick regardless of what position he plays.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking of just a team that comes at you in ways in the Indiana Pacers, like, it's just really tough to face a team like that has multiple guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot. Like we're seeing in the playoffs, and we'll touch on that a little briefly when we get to the conference finals discussion on the pod, KC. But yeah, I'm with you when you have a guy at 6'9" that is versatile, but then also can be able to get out on the wing, can rebound and push in transition, and can play make. Like, his passing skills for me is underrated when you look at what he averaged assist-wise in the Big 12. I think he was 4th in assists in the league and averaged around like closer to 5 assists, I want to say, for his long season at BYU. And he's a young guy, right? And it moves it towards, what the Bulls are, are. And that's a young team. So at 19, for him to be able to come into a situation with this Bulls team with a little bit of pro experience, he's not just coming from high school 1 year at the collegiate level and then to the NBA. He understands how the inner workings of a professional organization goes about their business. And, for him to slot in would be nice for this Bulls team. I didn't bring this up on the pod last week, 𝗙𝐶, but when we were speaking briefly about Derik Queen, and I've been watching more of his game, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but this comparison I'm going to make it. I want to get your thoughts on it. He reminds me of a newer age Elton Brand. And you remember Elton Brand with this Bulls team, the Bulls drafting him back in the 1999 NBA draft. And when you look at Elton Brand, Rookie of the Year, was a 20-10 guy, had a very long NBA career. And coming out of Duke, you didn't expect him to have that type of career. But when you look at the comparisons with Brand and Derik Queen, two guys that are not overly athletic, but just knew how to score the basketball, were great with their positioning. Basketball IQ was there. And that's why I say the new age Elton Brand, because you're seeing Derik Queen with his ability to step out and handle the basketball from the perimeter more, just because that's just what the game requires of you now, no matter what position that you play. He brings that type of skill set to the NBA. But again, that's where the kind of bad, and I don't want to say bad like it's a bad thing for Queen, but just the fit doesn't work with this Bulls team and how they play and how they want to get up and down. I just want to hear your thoughts on that comparison with Derik Queen, Elton Brand, and is he the new age Elton Brand?
Well, I love that comparison because I like old school comparisons. And by the way, 𝗵cie franchise would like a word because it was co-rookie of the year. You know that.
My bad. 𝗵cie franchise. I apologize, man. Look, one of the best ball handlers and dudes out when it comes to the NBA, man. So my bad, 𝗵cie franchise.
Co-rookie of the year. But yeah, EB was a heck of a player. And yeah, I mean, that point you make about Queen, I like that comp. But, regardless if you have that comp, the point that you want to make is like the Bulls are less hung up on positional fit and more on philosophical fit. And so, I mean, that's what the question you got to ask yourself. We don't know the answer to it, but like if he is there at 12, does he fit with the way you want to play stylistically? And you can say, okay, well, 𝗬𝗏 is old and slow, but no, man, 𝗬𝗏 is a very quick decision maker.
Yeah.
He fit right into he fit perfectly from that philosophical switch. He fit in the half court, slow it down with DeMar. You speed it up. 𝗬𝗏 had his best year of his 3 years as a Bull last year. So you can say 𝗬𝗏 isn't athletic or is a plotter or whatever. I disagree. I think he's a very quick decision maker. He's a great trail guy and obviously a way better shooter than Queen. So you have that pick and pop option and trail option. So again, we don't know the answer to this. We're just raising the questions right now, but it's a good question to ask. Like if Queen is there at 12, are the philosophical fit concerns, do they outweigh just making the pick of clearly a skilled player? And we don't want to make this turn into like a Queen bashing or a hater. He's a great player.
You're right. Exactly. Yes, he is.
He's going to have a good NBA career. It's just, where does he fit? And that's a question I know the Bulls are asking as well as other teams, particularly with, as I mentioned, how he tested athletically at the combine.
Yeah, 6'10" and averaged just over a block a game at Maryland, along with, the rebounds and the points. He was one of the best freshmen and also big men in the nation at Maryland. So it's not like, like to your point, 𝗙𝐶, we're not having Derik Queen bashing. Please do not misinterpret what we're saying. But in terms of just the philosophical fit with this Bulls team, I think you could go another route other than Derik Queen with this team and how you want to play. And Derik Queen, I think for me, and I said this maybe about a month ago, 𝗙𝐶, as we finished up with the college basketball season and we got into just draft talk, I thought he was and still believe that he's going to be like a top 7 pick. I know that, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors as it comes to any draft on the professional sports level, right? You're going to have guys that, quote unquote, have their stock rise or drop. But he's going to be a dude that for sure will add to a team wherever he's going to be drafted. So some potentially good options for this Bulls team at 12. There was a little chatter of people thinking that the Bulls will move up in a trade in the draft. I just can't see that happening because they don't have a lot to offer. And then looking at this draft, there are a lot of teams that don't want to give up their positions in this draft. So we'll just kind of throw that talk to the side and leave that for some other people out there, 𝗙𝐶.
Yeah, I mean Mavericks need a stopgap point guard starter. So Lonzo Ball for the #1 pick. Who says no? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
There it is.
That's
There
a
it
joke,
is.
people.
Right, exactly. Because somebody's going to take it and run with it. Casey Johnson, 𝗂𝗏 Bulls Insider, says that Lonzo Ball to the Mavs, #1 overall pick. There's a trade right there. Just stop, people, because we know how you work out there in the social media streets. All right, Casey, let's move it forward to some guys that were drafted in the later lottery and also the later first round and also second round of the NBA when they came out in the NBA draft. And speaking of the all-NBA teams, because that was announced last week, and you have some names, the heavy hitters for sure, the usual names, the usual suspects like 𝗵𝗏 𝗏𝗀𝗃, 𝗍𝗏𝘀 Jokic, Jason Tatum once again on the all-NBA team, but also a couple of names in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Donovan Mitchell that showed up and showed out, man. But you have, and this is where you get to some of those names that were either late lottery, late first round, or second round picks. And I have to bring up the name in Jalen Brunson, right? Second round pick when he came out of Villanova, second team All-NBA. Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, Steph Curry. So the older guard still hanging on, getting the representation of that older guard in the second team All-NBA. Evan Mobley as well, second team All-NBA. And then third team, you have Cade Cunningham, Karl Anthony Towns, Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Williams, and James Harden. So when you look at those lists of names on those teams, did the NBA get it right? Because from my perspective and my view of it, I believe they really got it right. Maybe with the exception of Evan Mobley. It's kind of tough to see a guy win all Defensive Player of the Year and be slotted into the second All-NBA team. But, you can't discredit, or discount Nikola Jokic and what he was able to do in 𝗵𝗏 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃.
Yeah, I mean, like, who are you taking off that first team? I mean, that's the issue. I think they got the first team right. You could maybe argue, obviously Cleveland's also being recognized for regular season team success with Mitchell on the first team and Mobley on second team. I did not have a ballot this year. I've had ballots in the past. I personally did factor when I did have a ballot. I would always factor team success as a major component to my selection process. So I don't hate that either. The Cade Cunningham one is a tough one because you can make a case for him in the second team. I mean, to me, the Pistons were one of the best stories in the NBA this season, and he was clearly the engine that drove that team. But then you always have to ask, okay, if he's on the second team, who are you taking off? But overall, I think they got the 15 pretty solid, pretty. I don't think there were any glaring omissions. Love to see Jalen on that second team. Again, team success, a big part of that. So I'm pretty good with it overall. Any glaring omissions from your perspective, Cam, or not?
Not too much. I think the one thing about these first, second, and third team All-NBAs is you're going to have guys that are, quote unquote, snubbed out of this thing, that don't get selected at all, or should be first team, or should be second team, or should have made third team. But I love that you said, Casey, when you had a vote with these All-NBA teams, that you factored in team success, because that's always a big component for me, whether it's these all defensive teams or all NBA teams or individual awards, is how did you directly impact team success? And for all of these guys on this list, on these all NBA teams, they directly impacted their team success. Because if you're looking at the names and who they are, especially when you look at that first team, these guys are in either the top 3, possibly top 4 of their respective conference as a team standings and record-wise, right? So you're looking at a Giannis or Nikola Jokic or Shea Gilgeous-Alexander or Donovan Mitchell or Jason Tatum. They are one of the main reasons why, if not the main reason why, their team is competing for a top 3 spot in their respective conference. So you have to make sure that not only that the numbers are there from an individual side, but also the team aspect, the wins are there, but then also how they impact the winning around them in terms of the other guys, right? I think Donovan Mitchell is a great example of that, with not only him being able to keep up his individual performance and just being one of the best guards in the league, but also you saw the growth of Darius Garland and him becoming a first-time All-Star this past year. Evan Mobley, who really unlocked some things to the help of Kenny Atkinson, but of course of Evan Mobley becoming all defensive and then also being second team All-NBA. Jared Allen, another name. So I think Donovan Mitchell is one of the best examples of that when you think about individual success, team success, and really impacting the other guys around them. and allowing them to shine too. So I'm with you, 𝗪cie. I think the NBA got it right on this one. Cade Cunningham has a strong choice and really resume to be on that second team, but who do you take off? Like, do you take off Brunson from the second team? I mean, do you take off one of the old guards and LeBron James or Steph Curry? It's really tough to make that decision. I don't think you can do that.
Really, so some notable names that have had some All-NBA love in the past, and this speaks to the team success argument, are Devin Booker and Trae Young. Both had very solid seasons, not on there, but their teams were pretty underwhelming this year. One name I did hear some complaining about, again, probably honoring team success, was Şengün with the Rockets, and obviously their great season. My feeling is, as good of a season as he had, that to me, he might be a little young, and B, that to me was the sum being greater than the individual parts. Van Vliet, obviously the engine for that team, to me, a big part of that team success was the coach. I mean, he's kind of the personality of that team. Şengün obviously got a lot of votes and was close, but those are probably the three biggest names I can maybe see making an argument for, but I'm pretty good with the 15 that the voters got.
No doubt about that, 𝗪cie. Okay, and the one name on these 15 that were released for the All-NBA got the highest individual honor of the league, and they give it out every single season. It is the Michael Jordan Most Valuable Player. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder is this year's recipient for the 2024-25 season. We can take this conversation with SGA so many different ways, because we just talked about team success. Well, you can check that box for SGA. 68 wins for the Oklahoma City Thunder, best record in the NBA. You want to talk numbers? Well, he's a dude that led the league in scoring. Defensively, he was able to get some things as well, and you could make a case for him being maybe Defensive Player of the Year. This dude has had so many 30-point games, 40-point games, clutch moments, and he was able to be durable within all of that throughout an 82-game season. We saw him early on at the United Center, and this is very early on in the season. Wasn't one of the best Shea Gilgeous-Alexander games, and just to be honest, the Bulls and also the Thunder shot poorly in that game. It was a really rough one. You saw SGA really kind of turn it on in the second half and some of the fourth quarter, but it's just how he plays, 𝗪cie, and we're seeing it in the Western Conference Finals, especially last night in Game 4 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, where he just can get his shot anywhere at any time, at any angle, and it is so impressive.
Yeah, I actually I was texting with somebody from the league last night that I text with a lot when I'm watching games, and they said, confession time, I actually don't always love watching SGA play because of his foul baiting. I was like, well, then you don't like watching Jalen Brunson play either. I mean, they're masters, or James Harden, or DeMar DeRozan. I mean, it's like they're masters at manipulating contact to get to the line. And to your point, his ability to either hurt you in the mid range or get to the rim. And obviously he's got the three ball as well, and then gets to the line. He's just a multifaceted scorer. A couple of things about the MVP, and this to me is always one of the hardest awards. This and Coach of the Year, because there's always so many great candidates for both.
Great point.
First of all, let's emphasize one thing: it's a regular season award, so take the playoff performances out. It's a regular season award. I did not, again, like I said, I've had ballots in the past. I did not have one this year. I would have had a very hard time voting against 𝗪̇cic, given what he did this season. He had arguably his best season. I do think there's some voter fatigue when it comes to him and how many times he's won the award. I'm glad you brought up the word durability. This is not a knock against 𝗪̇cic, because obviously an injury is out of his control, but I loved SGA's availability for a 68-win team. That probably ultimately would have swayed me to SGA vote. But man, that 𝗪̇cic season was something special. And when he's out, I mean, you can just see how thin that team is. And I know SGA is the star of the Thunder by a long shot, but they have a lot of depth, a lot of other very good players. And Denver, to me, it's amazing they got to where they got this season, because 𝗪̇cic was basically carrying that team down the stretch. And what a season he had. I know I'm kind of talking all over the place here. It was an impossible vote. It was an impossible vote, and there is no wrong answer, by the way. If you voted 𝗪̇cic, you're right. If you voted SGA, you're right. I ultimately to put myself in a camp, like I said, I probably would have given them slight nod to SGA, given the number of games he played. I believe he's at 78 or 79 and 68 wins for the Thunder.
Yeah, no doubt. I was on the side of SGA last year, KC, essentially being NBA MVP last year, and I get it, right? And it's on a certain level similar to what we discussed about Alperen Şengün, right? I mean, you want to see these guys not just have like a, one-time type season and they're getting some of the highest honors in the NBA. The biggest test and one of the biggest tests in the league, especially from an individual standpoint, whether it comes to numbers or impact and winning, is if you can follow it up that next season and do it again and have some consistency with that. And so I think for a lot of people out there, that was the question about Shea. And I get it. I understand it. And it was Shea and Nikola Jokic last year. It was Shea and Nikola Jokic this year. Could very well be Shea and Nikola Jokic next year and the year after that, just because they have no signs of slowing down, especially Jokic, and him historically having a better season this year than he did last year when he won NBA MVP. And I believe that there's some voter fatigue placed into that when you have a guy that's won MVP 3 of the last 4 years too. You want to see a new face come out of it, and just the storylines of it with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in Oklahoma City and just who he is, and just I think you factor in the brand off the court as part of it as well. I'm not sure if that sways voters out there, not speaking to you particularly, KC, but there is an entire thing about this when it comes to NBA MVP and making sure that it's not just a numbers thing or team aspect. There's a part of an off the court situation with it as well. But when you look at Shea this year and just how he's been able to maintain excellence, I think that's always impressive, especially with the pressure that he had coming into this season, because it was all eyes on Shea. Okay, that was cute what you did last year. Like, yeah, you were in the running for NBA MVP and we're behind Jokic, but can you follow it up and do it again this year? And he was able to do it and do it on a massive level. So Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, 2024, 2025 NBA MVP, well-deserved, and he is really leading this Thunder team to another NBA Finals berth. And the last time that we saw Oklahoma City in the NBA Finals, Casey, you got to go all the way back to, 2010, right? 2010 against the Miami Heat, the LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh Heedle version of the Miami Heat. And this team, watching them last night, you're like, I don't know who the hell can beat these guys. Like, they are, with the exception of Game 3, which was weird in a lot of different areas, just from OKC. It felt like they just cruised into that thing, turnovers, bad shots, all of that. But they got back on track in Game 4 of last night against Minnesota and made Anthony Edwards, some people want him to be the face of the NBA. Ant doesn't want it, but they made him look below average, not just average, but below average. Now, Ant picked it up a little more in the second half, but Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle did not truly have an impact in Game 4, but it was Shea Gilgeous-Alexander who put up a 40-piece in a desperately needed win for Oklahoma City. And now as the series will shift to Game 5 on, I believe, Friday. Is it Friday? Thursday, I believe. Thursday or Friday for Oklahoma City for Game 5, that they have a chance to secure their spot in the NBA Finals. Yeah,
and it would be the first since 2012, not 2010, but 2012. But the Heatles. And I'll just say, like, their depth just is astounding. I mean, there was – one game where, like, Isaiah Joe barely played. I think he came in, to mop up some minutes. The next game, he's like the sixth man. I mean, it's like they have Matt Dagnall has so many. Dagnall has so many options. I believe I just called him by his wrong name, by the way. So I apologize. He has so many options, so much depth. It's like so many guys can come in and hit a shot. It's astounding. And then obviously you've got Alex Caruso in the perfect role, that disrupting force off the bench and defensively. And then, with Shea being the leader and Jalen Williams emerging as an all-star, I've been saying it for a while, I don't see any team beating them, not only this series, but next series as well. So, Mark Dagnall could have won Coach of the Year again. He was in the running, didn't win it. His ability to push the right buttons and have that team play so consistently all season long is a credit to him and the organization. Sam Presti obviously wins Executive of the Year. It's just a well-run franchise, top to bottom. And, I know personally, having spoken to Alex about this when the Bulls were late in Oklahoma, in the season in Oklahoma City, how special he knows this opportunity is and how special the opportunity of this team is for him. So it'd be great to see him win another chip too. So there's still basketball to be played. I'm not going to start taking my victory lap on my prediction yet.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming, KC. I knew that was coming, and I was going to kind of like hide my head a little bit, for people watching.
We're going to wait until next podcast, Cam. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have Edgar pull up the clips, and we're going to go from there. Okay?
You know what? And I just have to stand proudly in me choosing wrongly with this series and potentially the Eastern Conference Finals. It's a 7-game series for a reason, but it's looking very bleak for the Minnesota Timberwolves in that series. And it could look bleak for the New York Knicks because they're going to face off against the Indiana Pacers in Game 4 tonight at Gainesbridge Fieldhouse. And I had this Knicks team, KC, after the first 2 games, dead in the water. I thought, okay, well, it would have been nice to go 7 games, but you drop the first 2 games at home at Madison Square Garden with all the energy that you had from Knicks Nation and the city of New York and just everything. I mean, it was, like a, Academy Awards or, music award type of event with all the celebrities that were sitting courtside. Yeah. They were in the building for Games 1 and Game 2. And Indiana just came and took the breath and took the heart out of New York City. And going back home, I'm like, oh, well, this is going to end in a sweep, unfortunately. Like all of that, great storylines and a repeat of last year's matchup between the Pacers and the Knicks and the old 90s rivalry, just go ahead and throw it in the trash because the Knicks are about to get swept. And then you go to Game 3, and this Knicks team just becoming zombies. They just bounce back. And once again, another 20-point deficit that they face, they come back and they win the game. KC, for me, we're basketball guys, but some things don't make sense. Can you try and make it make sense for this Knicks team of how they did it?
Well, a couple of things. They did this obviously with Jalen Brunson in foul trouble. I mean, Cat obviously had the huge game offensively. That makes it even more impressive. I would say, and I was just quickly checking Naismith's injury status for tonight. He's officially listed as questionable. That to me, even though he returned from that ankle injury, that to me took the wind out of the Pacers' sails. They do have moments as good as they are offensively where they struggle to score. And for whatever reason, to me, their offense dried up down the stretch. And I know Naismith came back last game, but, to me, that injury looks like it's pretty severe and it could affect him moving forward. This is why this series is by no means over. And I was with you. Yeah. Pacers go up 2-0. I was almost going to start taking the victory lap on my prediction then, but Knicks, there's just something about this team that they're so resilient, they're so tough. They're obviously molded in the image of their coach, and Jalen Brunson has that same demeanor and leadership style. Josh Hart, as good of a rebounder for pound as there is in this league. So that to me is what it comes down to. Indiana's got to find its way offensively again. I think they will be able to do so in Game 4 tonight at home, but that's why they play the games. And the Naismith injury is something to monitor surely moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of moving forward, it'll be interesting to see if Mitchell Robinson will start again for the New York Knicks tonight because he replaced Josh Hart in that starting 5. And it feels like that Tibbs will go with that type of strategy with having Mitchell Robinson with a double big lineup with him and Karl-Anthony Towns in the front court for the Knicks. But I think it also, when you go back to Game 3, KC, it really helped Josh Hart kind of have extra legs as you look at those rebounds that he grabbed for the Knicks in Game 3. There were massive rebounds. I mean, his last 2 were really game-saving, and let's just be honest, season-saving rebounds because he doesn't get those. He's not in that position or just not on that floor and providing that type of resistance. You're looking at a Knicks team that will be down 0-3 heading into potentially getting swept tonight, but that's not the reality for the New York Knicks or New York City. So they have another opportunity to get things right and steal 2 games from Indianapolis. And just please, basketball guys, just allow that to happen. Let's just have one of these series go 7 games in the conference finals because we need it. We need it, KC. We definitely need it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm looking forward to these conference finals being over so we can make our predictions for the next series and I can be right again. No, I'm just kidding.
I might have to sit that one out, KC. Just
no, you're in. Hey, also, I predicted both these series would go 7 games, so I can't take too much of a victory lap, even if I get both victors. Let's see how they play out. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. That's true. I always say, like, people think, 2-0, it's over. No, man, these series, anyone who's experienced playoff basketball knows these are just battles of attrition, and so many things can happen. I mean, Nesmith injury is another example of how things can turn in an instant. And again, we'll see, he was able to return from it in game 3, but not totally be himself. We'll see what his status is and his effectiveness is moving forward, because that's a significant situation, obviously, for Indiana.
Yeah, no doubt. All eyes will be on that situation with Aaron Nesmith and the Indiana Pacers. So you have game 4 going down tonight inside of Gainesbridge Fieldhouse. Knicks-Pacers game 5 tomorrow night between the Thunder and the Timberwolves in OKC. So potentially by tomorrow night, we could have one person or one team placing themselves in the NBA Finals. But look, if we can get 7 games, that would be great in both series. But I'm just going to be humble about this because the basketball gods have a certain way of humbling if you start to make these predictions and get ahead of yourself. So I'll just remain and just enjoy the games. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. He is none other than 𝗕𝗄𝐶 Johnson. I'm Cam Smith. We'll talk to you and see you next week. Take care, everybody.